I'm Madison Hayes, 32, sitting on a pristine Bali beach with my phone purposely turned off. My sister Eliza deliberately excluded me from her lavish wedding, so instead of crying at home, I chose self-care halfway across the world. The irony? Something was unraveling back home with her perfect day, while I was finally finding peace after years of family drama. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from and consider subscribing if you've ever needed to choose yourself over toxic family situations. Trust me, what happened next changed everything. Growing up in suburban Boston, my childhood with Eliza seemed picture perfect from the outside. Our father Robert, a successful attorney, and our mother Catherine, a former teacher turned full-time homemaker, provided us with a beautiful colonial home, summer vacations to Cape Cod, and all the opportunities two girls could want. Eliza is 3 years younger than me, and as children, we were inseparable despite our different personalities. I was always the responsible one. My elementary school teachers called me mature beyond my years. While other kids were trading stickers and playing freeze tag, I was organizing my desk and helping classmates with their math problems. By high school, I was class president, honor society member, and the reliable daughter who never missed curfew. I planned my future meticulously, earned a scholarship to Cornell for architecture, and graduated with honors before landing a position at a prestigious Boston firm. Eliza was different. Where I was studious and measured, she was spontaneous and magnetic. She could talk her way out of anything with her bright smile and charming laugh. When she broke Mom's favorite vase playing indoor softball at age 9, she somehow ended up with ice cream as consolation for being upset about the accident. When she missed curfew in high school, she'd spin stories about helping a friend through a crisis that had our parents practically thanking her for being such a compassionate person. "Madison, you could learn something from your sister about connecting with people," Mom would say, not realizing how those words stung. Not everything has to be so serious all the time. The pattern continued through college. While I worked part-time jobs to supplement my scholarship, Eliza changed majors 3 times at the expensive private university our parents fully funded. When she dropped out junior year to find herself, they supported her apartment while she explored various passions that never quite materialized into careers. My best friend Tara saw it clearly. We met during our first architecture job and quickly became close. She came from a family with similar dynamics. "Your parents have created different sets of rules for you too," she observed one night as I vented about having to bail Eliza out of yet another financial emergency. "They expect you to be the responsible one, but reward her for being dependent." Despite the frustrations, I loved my sister. When her dramatic relationship with Jeremy, her college boyfriend, imploded after she discovered his infidelity, I was the one who flew to Chicago to help her move out. When she lost her job at the gallery because she kept showing up late, I helped her update her resume and practiced interview questions with her. When she totaled her car and didn't have insurance, I loaned her money for a new one, money she still hasn't repaid. "You're the best sister ever, Maddie," she'd say, using my childhood nickname that only she was allowed to use. "I don't know what I'd do without you." And I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Because despite everything, those moments when Eliza showed genuine appreciation made me feel like the big sister I always tried to be. But those moments became increasingly rare as we moved further into adulthood. By the time we were both in our 30s, a clear pattern had emerged. Eliza created chaos, the family rallied around her, and I was expected to help clean up the mess while receiving little recognition for my stability. "Your sister just feels things more deeply than most people," Dad would explain after particularly dramatic episodes. "She's sensitive. You've always been the strong one." Being the strong one meant my own struggles were often overlooked. When I went through a devastating breakup with my boyfriend of 3 years, Mark, the family's sympathy lasted about a week before attention returned to Eliza's latest crisis. When I was passed over for a major promotion I had worked toward for years, my disappointment was met with distracted nods and quick changes of subject. Tara watched it all with growing concern. "You deserve better than being the family afterthought, Madison," she would tell me. "They take advantage of your reliability." I knew she was right, but family dynamics are hard to break. I kept showing up, kept being reliable, kept putting my feelings aside to maintain peace. Until the wedding that would change everything. Eliza met Trevor Blackwood at a charity gala our parents had dragged her to in hopes of introducing her to the right kind of people after her string of unsuccessful relationships. Trevor came from old money, ran a venture capital firm, and moved in elite Boston social circles. At 36, he was 8 years older than Eliza and carried himself with the confident authority of someone used to getting his way. "He's absolutely perfect," Eliza gushed during our weekly coffee date, flashing a massive diamond engagement ring that made heads turn at the cafe. "We're going to have the most amazing life together." The engagement came after only 4 months of dating, which immediately set off alarm bells for me. It wasn't just the rushed timeline that concerned me. During the few times I'd been around Trevor, I'd noticed how he subtly controlled situations. He ordered for Eliza at restaurants without asking what she wanted. He checked her phone when she received texts. He made small but cutting remarks when she expressed opinions different from his. "Are you sure this isn't moving too fast?" I asked carefully, trying to balance support with genuine concern. "You haven't known each other very long. When you know, you know," she replied dismissively. "Not everyone needs 3 years of dating and a pros and cons list like you and Mark did. And look how that turned out." The barb stung, but I let it go. This pattern had played out countless times before. My practical concerns were dismissed as jealousy or overthinking. Our parents were ecstatic about the engagement. Trevor represented everything they had hoped Eliza would find: financial security, social status, and the promise of stability. They immediately began talking about the wedding as if it were a royal affair. "The Blackwoods know the governor," Mom mentioned repeatedly. "They summer in the Hamptons with celebrities." Initially, I was included in the wedding planning by default. Eliza asked me to be her maid of honor during a family dinner, making a show of the moment with a small gift box containing a custom bracelet engraved with sister, friend, maid of honor. "No one else could stand beside me on the biggest day of my life," she said, tears in her eyes that seemed genuine. For a few weeks, things were like they had been when we were children. We spent weekends browsing bridal magazines, creating Pinterest boards, and visiting potential venues. It felt like a reconnection, and I allowed myself to hope that this shared experience might heal some of the fractures in our relationship. Then Trevor's mother, Patricia, entered the picture. A formidable woman with impeccable social credentials and strong opinions, she quickly took control of the wedding planning. The intimate vineyard ceremony Eliza and I had discussed transformed into a 300-person extravaganza at Boston's most exclusive hotel. The simple, elegant dress designs Eliza had favorited were replaced by a custom designer gown with a price tag that made my eyes water. "Trevor's family has a certain standard to maintain," Eliza explained when I expressed surprise at the growing grandeur of the plans. "This isn't just about us. It's about 2 families joining." As the plans evolved, my role began to diminish. Patricia hired a professional wedding planner who dismissed my suggestions with thin smiles. Eliza began scheduling dress fittings and cake tastings without telling me until after they happened. When I offered to plan the bridal shower, I was informed that Patricia had already arranged for it to be held at her country club with a guest list I had no input on. Meanwhile, I was noticing more troubling signs in Eliza's relationship. At a family dinner 2 months before the wedding, Trevor openly criticized Eliza's choice of appetizer as fattening, saying, "We need to make sure you fit into that dress, darling." Instead of objecting, Eliza merely pushed the plate away with a nervous laugh. When she mentioned wanting to invite her former college roommate Lucy, Trevor dismissed the idea, saying, "She's not really our kind of people anymore, is she?" Eliza didn't bring up Lucy again. After witnessing several such interactions, I finally worked up the courage to speak with my sister privately. We were having a rare moment alone during a break in wedding errands, sitting in my car outside a florist shop. "Eliza, I'm asking this because I love you," I began carefully. "Are you sure Trevor makes you happy? Sometimes the way he speaks to you seems a little..." "A little what?" Her voice immediately took on a defensive edge. "Controlling," I finished gently. "I just want to make sure you're being treated with respect." Her expression hardened. Just because you can't maintain a relationship doesn't mean you should try to sabotage mine. Trevor has standards, and he's helping me become a better person. Becoming a better person shouldn't mean someone makes you feel small, I replied, trying to keep my voice level. I'm worried about you. You're worried I'm finally going to have the life you always thought you'd have first, she snapped. The successful husband, the beautiful home, the perfect family.
You're supposed to be happy for me, Madison.
That's what sisters do. The conversation ended there, with a tense silence hanging between us. I drove her back to her apartment without another word about Trevor, but something had shifted. In trying to protect my sister, I had crossed an invisible line. Looking back, I can see that moment was the beginning of the end of my role in her wedding. The official exclusion came 3 weeks before the wedding date. Eliza had invited me to brunch at an upscale restaurant, and I arrived hopeful that we might repair the growing rift between us. Instead, I found her already seated with her friend Stephanie from her brief stint at art school. Stephanie had always been friendly enough to me, though we weren't close. I knew something was wrong the moment I sat down. Eliza's smile didn't reach her eyes, and she launched into conversation with a practiced quality that felt rehearsed. Madison, I wanted to talk to you about the wedding, she began after the waiter took our drink orders. Things have gotten so complicated with the planning and with Trevor's family's expectations. I've noticed, I said cautiously. Is there something I can help with? Actually, it's about your role, she continued, stirring her water with a straw rather than meeting my eyes. I've been thinking that being maid of honor might be too much pressure for you with your work schedule and everything else you have going on. My stomach dropped. I've made time for everything so far. I've rearranged client meetings and worked weekends to be available. I know, but... Eliza glanced at Stephanie, who gave her an encouraging nod. Stephanie and I have reconnected so much during this process, and she really understands the vision I have for the wedding. So I've asked her to step in as maid of honor. The words hit me like a physical blow. You're replacing me? As your maid of honor? It's not replacing, Eliza said quickly. It's just realigning roles to reduce your stress. I'm not stressed about being your maid of honor, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. I'm your sister. I want to stand beside you. Well, she said, finally meeting my eyes with a hardened expression, there's something else. Trevor thinks, we both think, that your negativity about our relationship is creating bad energy around the wedding. My negativity? I repeated, incredulous. You've made it clear you don't approve of Trevor or how quickly we got engaged. You've questioned my decisions at every turn. Trevor says I need to surround myself with supportive people right now, not someone who's secretly hoping we fail. The accusation was so far from the truth that for a moment, I couldn't speak. When I did find my voice, it came out as a whisper. I have never, ever wanted anything but happiness for you. Your version of my happiness, she countered. Not what actually makes me happy. I looked from Eliza to Stephanie, who had the grace to look uncomfortable, and back to my sister. So, what are you saying? You don't want me as maid of honor, but I'm still a bridesmaid? Eliza took a deep breath. I think it would be best if you came as a guest. Just focus on enjoying the day without responsibilities. The reframing was stunning in its audacity. Being removed from the wedding party wasn't for my benefit. It was a demotion, a public statement about my standing with my sister. I somehow made it through the rest of brunch in a fog of hurt and disbelief. I don't remember what I ate or what else was said. When I got home, I called our parents, certain they would be as shocked as I was by Eliza's decision. Sweetheart, we know it's disappointing, Mom said when I explained what had happened. But it is her wedding day. Every bride deserves to have exactly what makes her comfortable. Even if what makes her comfortable is humiliating her sister? I asked. No one is trying to humiliate you, Dad interjected. Eliza is under a lot of pressure with the Blackwoods and all the expectations. Try to see it from her perspective. What about my perspective? I asked, voice breaking. Doesn't that matter at all? The silence on the other end of the line was answer enough. I spent the next week trying to process my feelings. I made attempts to speak with Eliza directly, sending texts and leaving voicemails asking if we could talk things through. She responded with brief messages saying she needed space and would reach out when she was ready. That reach out never came. Instead, 2 weeks before the wedding, a text arrived that shattered whatever composure I had left. After talking with Trevor and his family, we think it's best if you don't attend the wedding. The tension between us is too much right now, and we need this day to be perfect. I hope you understand. Love you. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Not only demoted from maid of honor, but now uninvited completely. And delivered by text message. I called my parents immediately, sobbing as I read them the message. There must be some misunderstanding, Mom said, though her voice lacked conviction. Let me talk to her. Dad got on the line too.
This isn't right.
We'll speak with her together. But their intervention, if it happened at all, changed nothing. The next day, Mom called me back with a carefully measured tone. Madison, we've spoken with Eliza. She feels very strongly about this decision. She says things between you two have been difficult for some time, and she doesn't want any tension on her wedding day. And you're okay with this?
I asked.
With her excluding your other daughter from her wedding? Of course we're not okay with it, Dad said, having apparently picked up another extension. But we're in an impossible position. If we push too hard, she might, well, she suggested she might elope if things get too complicated. The Blackwoods have invested so much in this event. The subtext was clear. The social and financial implications of a cancelled wedding outweighed the injustice of my exclusion. Once again, keeping the peace with Eliza took priority over everything else. That evening, my friends Tara and Jennifer came over with wine and takeout after I told them what had happened. They found me surrounded by tissues, eyes swollen from crying. This is beyond unacceptable, Tara said fiercely, pouring large glasses of red wine for each of us. Your sister has reached a new level of self-absorption. And your parents are enabling it, Jennifer added. She worked as a family therapist and often provided insight into my family dynamics. They're afraid of Eliza's reactions, so they accommodate her unreasonable demands rather than setting healthy boundaries. I just don't understand how it came to this, I said, picking at the container of pad thai they'd brought. I've always been there for her. Always. Which is why she thinks she can treat you this way, Jennifer explained gently. You've consistently shown her that you'll accept whatever scraps of affection she offers, no matter how she behaves. So, what do I do now? I asked. Tara took a sip of her wine, then set it down decisively. You show her that you value yourself more than her approval. Don't sit at home crying during her wedding. Do something amazing for yourself instead. That night, after my friends left, I sat on my couch looking at my calendar. The wedding was scheduled for May 15th, just 12 days away. I had already requested time off work for the wedding and related activities. The thought of sitting in my apartment alone while my family celebrated without me was unbearable. I opened my laptop and began searching for last-minute travel deals. If I wasn't welcome at the wedding, I would go somewhere I could focus on healing myself instead of everyone else for once. By morning, I had booked a 10-day trip to Bali, departing 3 days before the wedding and returning a week after. The tickets cost more than I would normally spend, but I used the money I'd been saving for Eliza's wedding gift. It seemed fitting. When I informed my parents of my plans, their reaction was predictably self-centered. You're leaving the country? Mom asked, sounding genuinely surprised. But what if Eliza changes her mind? What if she needs you? She's made it very clear she doesn't need or want me there, I replied. And for once, I'm going to respect her wishes completely and remove myself from the situation. This feels like you're punishing her, Dad said. No, I corrected him. This is me finally doing what's best for me instead of waiting around for crumbs of inclusion from a sister who has made her feelings crystal clear. As I packed for my trip, I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. The family dynamics that had defined so much of my life were painful, but the prospect of stepping away from them, even temporarily, offered a glimmer of hope. Maybe distance would provide the perspective I needed to build healthier relationships with my family moving forward. Or maybe it would confirm what I had begun to suspect, that loving them didn't have to mean accepting mistreatment. The moment I stepped off the plane in Denpasar, the humid tropical air enveloped me like a warm embrace. After 20-plus hours of travel, I was exhausted but determined to immerse myself fully in this escape. I had chosen a small resort in Ubud, away from the more touristy beach areas, wanting tranquility and natural beauty rather than parties and crowds. The resort was everything the website had promised, a collection of individual bungalows nestled among rice terraces and tropical gardens. My room featured an open-air bathroom where I could shower under the stars, a canopied bed draped with mosquito netting, and a small private porch overlooking a ravine filled with palms and flowering trees. On my first morning, I woke to the calls of unfamiliar birds and the distant sound of a gamelan orchestra practicing. For several minutes, I lay still, listening to these new sounds, watching sunlight filter through the wooden slats of my bungalow. Then I reached for my phone out of habit, only to pause with my hand hovering over it. I had told my parents how to reach my hotel in case of a genuine emergency, but I had decided before leaving that I would turn off my phone for the duration of my stay. No social media updates about the wedding. No potential messages from family members questioning my decision to leave. No work emails to pull me back into my regular responsibilities. With a decisive motion, I powered down the phone and placed it in the room's safe. The small action felt monumental, as if I were cutting a cord that had always tethered me to others' expectations. At breakfast in the resort's open-air restaurant, I sat alone with my coffee and fruit plate, watching other travelers and trying to imagine their stories. At the table next to mine, two women about my age were deep in conversation, occasionally laughing together in that comfortable way of old friends. "First time in Bali?" One of them asked, noticing my observation. "Is it that obvious?" I smiled. "You have that wonderful wide-eyed look," she said. "I'm Leah, and this is my travel partner in crime, Michelle." "Madison." I introduced myself. "And yes, first time. I sort of booked this trip on impulse." "Those are often the best kind," Michelle said, raising her coffee cup in a toast. "Spontaneous decisions lead to the best adventures." We chatted through breakfast, and I found myself accepting their invitation to join them for a day trip to a nearby water temple. Leah was a graphic designer from San Francisco, and Michelle taught high school English in Portland. They had been friends since college, and made a point of traveling together once a year. "We made a pact after graduation," Leah explained as our driver navigated the winding roads. "No matter what happens in our lives, we prioritize this time together." As we explored the temple with its series of purification pools and ancient stone carvings, I found myself sharing more of my story than I had intended. There was something freeing about confiding in strangers who had no connection to my life back home. "Your sister uninvited you from her wedding?" Michelle asked, visibly shocked. "That's next-level bridezilla behavior." "And your parents just went along with it?" Leah added. "They always do," I said, surprised by the lack of emotion in my voice as I stated this fact. Usually, discussing my family's dynamics left me in tears or seething with anger. Today, standing in this ancient spiritual place thousands of miles from home, I felt a curious detachment, as if I were describing characters in a book rather than my own life. "Well, I think you made the right choice coming here instead," Michelle said firmly. "Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is remove yourself from toxic situations." The day with Leah and Michelle set the tone for my time in Bali. I began to embrace the freedom of being alone in a place where no one knew me or had expectations of me. I signed up for a sunrise yoga class at the resort, something I'd always been curious about but had never made time for at home. The instructor, an American expatriate named Michael who had lived in Bali for 15 years, emphasized presence and mindfulness. "Your body is here in this beautiful place," he told the class as we moved through poses on mats facing the sunrise. "But is your mind here too? Or is it still tangled in the problems you came here to escape?" The question hit me with unexpected force. My body was in Bali, but my thoughts kept returning to Boston, to the wedding that would take place in 2 days, to the hurt and rejection I felt. Each time I caught myself ruminating on these thoughts, I gently brought my attention back to the present moment, to the sensation of my breath, to the early morning light painting the rice terraces gold. After class, Michael approached me. "First time practicing yoga? Is it that obvious?" I asked, echoing my response to Leah from days earlier. "You have good natural awareness," he said. "But I could see you battling with something." Your body would relax into a pose, and then tension would creep back in, especially around your shoulders and jaw. "I'm trying to leave some baggage behind," I admitted. "It's harder than I expected. The heaviest baggage we carry is often invisible," he said. "If you're interested, I lead a meditation session every evening at sunset. It might help with whatever you're processing." That evening, I joined Michael and a small group of other guests on a wooden platform overlooking the valley. As the sun began its descent, he guided us through a meditation focused on forgiveness and release. "Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning harmful actions," his calm voice explained. "It means freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. When we hold on to anger, the person we hurt most is ourselves." I thought about my anger toward Eliza, toward my parents, even toward Trevor and his family. The anger felt justified, and part of me clung to it like a shield. But as I sat with my eyes closed, listening to the gentle rustle of palm fronds and distant wind chimes, I began to see how heavy that shield had become. I started keeping a journal during my trip, writing in it each morning on my private porch. I wrote about childhood memories, about patterns I was beginning to recognize in my relationships, about the person I wanted to become. Some mornings, the words flowed easily. Other times, I sat staring at the blank page, overwhelmed by emotions I couldn't quite name. On the day of Eliza's wedding, I deliberately planned a full schedule of activities. I started with yoga, followed by a cooking class where I learned to make traditional Balinese dishes. In the afternoon, I hired a local guide named Ketut to take me to less touristy areas of the island. Ketut was in his 60s, with a weathered face and gentle manner. As he drove me through small villages and past family compounds, he shared stories about Balinese culture and his own family. "In Bali, family is everything," he explained, "but not in the way Westerners often think. Here, we believe in strong bonds, but also in spiritual balance. If one person takes too much, harmony is disturbed." "What happens when there's no harmony?" I asked. "Then we perform rituals to restore balance," he said simply. "Sometimes that means giving more to those who have received less. Sometimes it means setting new boundaries." That evening, I attended Michael's meditation session again. As we focused on letting go, I found myself overcome with emotion. Tears streamed down my face as I released not just the recent hurt of Eliza's wedding exclusion, but years of accumulated pain from always being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one whose feelings came last. Later, alone in my bungalow, I made a decision. My original plan had been to return to Boston a week after the wedding. Instead, I called the front desk and extended my stay by 3 days. The thought of returning immediately to the aftermath of the wedding, to potential family drama and questions, felt overwhelming. I needed more time in this place that was already beginning to heal something long broken inside me. The next morning, I joined Leah and Michelle for breakfast again. They were leaving the following day, and we wanted to say proper goodbyes. "So the wedding happened yesterday," Leah said carefully. "How are you feeling?" "Surprisingly okay," I answered, realizing as I said it that it was true. I spent the day completely present here, not wondering what was happening back home. "That's progress," Michelle smiled. "Are you still keeping your phone off?" "Completely off and locked away," I confirmed. "I'll turn it back on when I'm ready to face whatever's waiting." "Just remember," Leah said, squeezing my hand across the table, "whatever drama is happening there doesn't diminish your worth. The way your family treats you isn't a reflection of who you are." As we hugged goodbye later, I felt immense gratitude for these temporary friends who had shown me more understanding in a few days than my family had in years. Their validation of my feelings and choices strengthened my resolve to maintain the boundaries I was beginning to establish. My remaining days in Bali passed in a blend of exploration and reflection. I visited ancient temples, hiked to a hidden waterfall, and spent quiet evenings reading books I downloaded before turning off my phone. With each day, I felt lighter, more centered, more confident in my decision to prioritize my own well-being. On my final evening, I sat with Michael after the meditation session, watching as darkness settled over the valley and tiny lights from villages appeared like earthbound stars. "You seem different from when you first arrived," he observed. "I feel different," I acknowledged. "More peaceful. More certain." "The work you've done here doesn't end when you leave," he said. "The challenges will still be waiting, but you'll face them with new awareness." "I'm not looking forward to turning my phone back on," I admitted. "I know there will be messages, probably angry ones." "Remember that you can respond to others with compassion while still maintaining your boundaries," he advised. "The path of least resistance isn't always the path of growth." As I packed my bags that night, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Sadness at leaving this beautiful place that had become a sanctuary. Anxiety about what awaited me at home. But underlying these feelings was a newfound strength and clarity. Whatever had happened during the wedding, whatever family drama was unfolding, I would face it as a different person than the one who had fled Boston 2 weeks earlier. What I didn't know then was just how dramatically things had fallen apart in my absence, or how desperately my family had been trying to reach me. While I was finding peace in Bali, a very different scene was unfolding back in Boston. I would learn the details later, pieced together from multiple perspectives, but the wedding that had been planned with such precision and expense was imploding in spectacular fashion. 2 days before the ceremony, Eliza and Trevor had a catastrophic argument during the rehearsal dinner. What began as a disagreement about seating arrangements escalated quickly when Trevor's best man Jackson made an ill-timed joke about Trevor's previous close calls with marriage. Eliza, who had been told Trevor had only one serious relationship before her, demanded an explanation. "It was nothing," Trevor insisted in front of their gathered families. "Jackson has an inappropriate sense of humor." But the damage was done. That night in their hotel suite, Eliza pressed for answers. According to what she later told our mother, Trevor initially dismissed her concerns, then became defensive when she wouldn't let it go. "Why are you so insecure?" he reportedly demanded. "This is exactly why I didn't tell you everything. You overreact to everything." The argument might have blown over if Trevor's phone hadn't chimed with a text message just then. When he lunged to keep Eliza from seeing it, her suspicions deepened. She grabbed the phone and discovered a message from someone named Andrea referencing a shared bank account that needed attention. "Who's Andrea?" Eliza demanded. "And what bank account?" The truth came tumbling out in ugly fragments. Trevor had significant financial problems he'd hidden from Eliza. His venture capital firm had made several bad investments and was hemorrhaging clients. The lavish lifestyle he projected was increasingly funded by debt. Andrea was not a lover, as Eliza initially feared, but his financial advisor who had been helping him conceal the extent of his troubles, including from his own family. "You lied to me about everything," Eliza said, according to what she told our parents later. "Your business, your finances, your past." "I didn't lie," Trevor insisted. "I just didn't share every detail. And none of this would be an issue if you weren't so concerned with status and appearances." "Me concerned with appearances?" Eliza shot back. "You're the one who insisted on a wedding we apparently can't afford so you could impress your family and business associates." The argument raged into the early morning hours. By dawn, Eliza had packed a bag and moved to our parents' house, leaving Trevor alone in the hotel suite they were supposed to share until the wedding. When news of the fight reached Trevor's parents, they immediately went into damage control mode. Patricia Blackwood arrived at our parents' house by mid-morning, insisting on speaking with Eliza alone. What transpired during that conversation only made things worse. "She didn't come to reconcile us," Eliza sobbed to our mother afterward. "She came to convince me to go through with the wedding regardless of how I feel or what Trevor did. She said, 'Every marriage has its challenges and financial matters can be resolved.' She cares more about avoiding embarrassment than about whether her son lied to me." Our parents, to their credit, supported Eliza's hesitation. Dad, who had initially been so impressed by Trevor's apparent success, was particularly upset about the financial deception. If he'd lie about something so fundamental before the wedding, what else would he hide afterward? He reportedly asked. By that evening, the situation had become even more complicated. Trevor arrived at our parents' house demanding to speak with Eliza. When she refused, he grew belligerent, accusing her of overreacting and threatening to bill her family for the wedding costs if she created a scandal by canceling. Dad, protective of Eliza despite everything, asked Trevor to leave. When Trevor refused, Dad threatened to call the police, saying, "No one speaks to my daughter that way in my home." The confrontation ended with Trevor storming off, but the damage was done. Eliza spent the night crying, alternating between rage at Trevor's deception and heartbreak over the collapse of her dreams. The morning before what should have been her wedding day, Eliza made her decision. She would not marry Trevor. With shaking hands, she called the wedding planner and asked her to notify the guests that the ceremony was canceled. The planner, who had witnessed countless wedding day dramas, tried to suggest postponement rather than cancellation. Many couples have pre-wedding jitters, she advised. Give yourself time to think. This isn't jitters, Eliza insisted. The wedding is off. Permanently. News spread quickly through Boston's social circles. Guests who had already arrived from out of town were confused and gossiping. The Blackwoods were mortified, especially when rumors about Trevor's financial problems began to circulate. Our mother took charge of notifying immediate family and close friends personally, while the wedding planner handled the broader guest list. As she made these difficult calls, Mom kept thinking about me, her other daughter, isolated in Bali with no knowledge of the unfolding drama. "We need to reach Madison," she told Dad after hanging up from yet another emotional conversation with a relative. "Eliza needs her sister right now." "I've tried calling her cell several times," Dad replied. "It goes straight to voicemail. I've left messages asking her to call us as soon as possible." "Try the hotel," Mom suggested. She gave us the information before she left. Dad called the resort in Bali and left an urgent message asking me to contact them. The staff promised to deliver it, but explained that I had requested privacy and minimal disturbances. Meanwhile, Eliza was falling apart. The shock of discovering Trevor's deception, combined with the humiliation of canceling a high-profile wedding at the last minute, overwhelmed her. In a moment of clarity amid her distress, she turned to our mother. "I need Madison," she said through tears. I was horrible to her, and she was right about everything. She saw through Trevor from the beginning. "We're trying to reach her," Mom assured her. "We'll keep trying." As the day that should have been filled with celebration instead became a day of damage, control, and grief, the attempts to contact me grew increasingly desperate. Dad called the resort multiple times. Mom left voicemail after voicemail on my cell. Even Tara and Jennifer received calls asking if they had any way to reach me. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. After being deliberately excluded from the wedding, I was now desperately needed. The sister who had been deemed a source of negative energy was now the one person Eliza wanted most. The wedding day itself brought a new wave of challenges. Despite the cancellation notices, some guests still arrived at the venue, confused by the last-minute change. Social media buzzed with speculation and rumors. Trevor's mother was reportedly telling people the wedding was merely postponed due to Eliza's emotional state, implying the fault lay with her rather than with her son's deception. At our parents' house, Eliza remained in her old bedroom, emerging only briefly to pick at the food Mom brought her. The expensive designer wedding dress hung and used in the guest room closet, a painful reminder of shattered dreams. "I should have listened to Madison," she repeated like a mantra. She tried to warn me, and I pushed her away because I didn't want to hear it. "We all got caught up in the excitement," Dad admitted, sitting beside her bed. "The Blackwood name, the social connections. We should have paid more attention to the red flags." As evening fell on what should have been Eliza's wedding night, our parents sat in their living room, emotionally exhausted from the day's events. "Do you think Madison is avoiding our calls deliberately?" Mom wondered. After how things were left, I wouldn't blame her. "No," Dad said after consideration. "She said she was turning off her phone completely during the trip. It's probably still off. And if the resort staff haven't given her our messages, she has no way of knowing what's happened. When she does find out, Mom said quietly, I hope she can forgive us. We should have stood up for her when Eliza uninvited her. We failed her. We've failed both our daughters in different ways, Dad acknowledged. With Eliza, we never set proper boundaries or expectations. With Madison, we took her strength and reliability for granted. This recognition, though belated, marked the beginning of a shift in my parents' understanding of their role in our family's dysfunctional patterns. As they continued trying to reach me in Bali, they also began the difficult process of examining their own actions and choices. Meanwhile, I remained blissfully unaware, enjoying my final days in paradise, sleeping peacefully in my bungalow while my family frantically tried to reach me across the world. On my last morning in Bali, I sat on my private porch watching the sunrise one final time. The past 2 weeks had transformed me in ways I was still discovering. I felt centered, calm, and clear about the boundaries I needed to establish going forward. The time had come to reconnect with the world I had left behind. With a deep breath, I retrieved my phone from the room safe and turned it on. The device vibrated continuously for nearly a minute as notifications flooded in. 17 missed calls from my parents, 23 text messages, voicemails, emails, even notifications from social media accounts I rarely checked. Something major had happened. My first instinct was panic. Had someone died? Was there a family emergency I had been unavailable for? I quickly scanned the text messages, and confusion replaced my fear. Mom. Madison, please call as soon as you get this. It's urgent. Dad. The wedding's off. Eliza needs you. Call home immediately. Tara. Holy drama explosion. Call me when you're back online. Your sister's wedding imploded, and everyone's looking for you. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, trying to process this information. The wedding was off. After all the planning, the expense, the family tension, it wasn't happening? And now they needed me? Part of me, a small vindictive part one wasn't proud of, wanted to ignore the messages. They had excluded me, hurt me, dismissed my concerns. Why should I rush to pick up the pieces now that I had been proven right? But the work I had done in Bali helped me recognize this reaction for what it was, a defensive response to pain. Taking a few centering breaths, I considered my options more thoughtfully. I didn't want to be pulled immediately back into family drama before I'd even left the peaceful environment of the resort. At the same time, I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen the messages now that my phone was on. I decided on a measured response. I texted my parents. Just turned on my phone and saw your messages. I'm safe and well in Bali. My flight leaves tonight. We'll call when I arrive home tomorrow. Whatever has happened, I'm sure it can wait one more day. Then I silenced my phone again and placed it in my bag. I had one more day in the sanctuary, and I intended to be fully present for it. Later that morning, I ran into Leah by the pool. She and Michelle had extended their stay and were leaving the same day as me. You turned your phone back on, didn't you? She asked, noting my distracted expression. Briefly, I admitted. Apparently my sister's wedding didn't happen, and now everyone's frantically trying to reach me. Ironic, Leo observed. After they uninvited you. Very. What are you going to do? I told them I'd call when I get home, I said. I'm not rushing back into the middle of whatever drama is happening before I'm ready. Good for you, Leah said approvingly. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself too. The long journey home gave me plenty of time to think. What could have happened to derail the wedding at the last minute? Was it Trevor's doing or Eliza's? And why was I suddenly so needed after being explicitly told my presence wasn't wanted? By the time my plane touched down in Boston, I had decided on my approach. I would listen to what had happened, but I would not immediately jump in as the family fixer. Whatever crisis had occurred, I needed to maintain the boundaries I had established for myself in Bali. After clearing customs and collecting my luggage, I found a quiet corner of the airport and called my parents. Mom answered on the first ring. Madison, are you home? We've been so worried. I just landed, I said. What happened with the wedding? The story came tumbling out in a rush, with Dad joining on another extension. Trevor's financial deception. The explosive fight. Eliza's decision to cancel. The social fallout. Throughout the explanation, they repeatedly emphasized how Eliza had been asking for me. She needs you, Madison, Mom concluded. She keeps saying you were right about him all along. I'm sorry she's hurting, I said carefully. But I need to go home and rest after traveling for 24 hours. I'll come by tomorrow to see everyone. But Dad began to protest. Tomorrow, I repeated firmly. I need time to process everything you've told me. The old Madison would have gone straight to my parents' house despite exhaustion. The old Madison would have put everyone else's needs before her own. But I wasn't that person anymore. I took a taxi to my apartment, showered, and slept for 12 hours straight. The next morning, I woke feeling refreshed and centered, ready to face my family with my new boundaries intact. When I arrived at my parents' house, the atmosphere was tense and subdued. Mom hugged me tightly at the door, thanking me repeatedly for coming. Dad hovered nearby, looking older and more tired than when I'd left. Where's Eliza? I asked. Still in bed, Mom answered. She's barely left her room since everything happened. I'll go up and see her, I said. But first, I need to talk with both of you. We sat in the living room, the same room where countless family discussions had taken place over the years. This time, however, I was determined that my voice would be truly heard. Before we focus completely on Eliza, I need to address what happened before I left. I began. You both allowed her to exclude me from her wedding without any real consequence. You prioritized her feelings and the social implications over the hurt she caused me. Madison, we know we handled it badly, Dad said, looking genuinely remorseful. We should have stood up for you. Yes, you should have, I agreed. And I need you both to understand something clearly. I love you, and I'm here now because I care about this family.
But things need to change.
I won't be taken for granted anymore. I won't be the reliable one who's expected to put her own feelings aside whenever Eliza creates a crisis. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We never meant to make you feel unimportant. I know you didn't mean to, I said more gently. But intent and impact are different things. The impact was that I felt my worth in this family was less than Eliza's. That stops now. They both nodded, looking somewhat shell-shocked by my directness. The old Madison would have softened her stance immediately, would have reassured them that everything was okay. The new Madison held firm. I'm going to go see Eliza now, I said, standing up. But remember, I'm setting new boundaries. I'll support her as her sister, but I won't fix this for her. I made my way upstairs to Eliza's old bedroom, knocking softly on the door. Go away, Mom, came the muffled response. I told you I'm not hungry. It's not Mom, I said. It's Madison. Silence, then rapid movement. The door flew open to reveal Eliza in pajamas, her face puffy from crying, hair unwashed. Without a word, she threw herself into my arms, sobbing against my shoulder. You came, she choked out between sobs. After everything I did, you still came? I guided her back into the room and sat beside her on the edge of the bed, keeping a gentle but firm distance between us. What happened, Eliza? I asked once her sobs had quieted. She told me her version of events, filling in details our parents hadn't known. How controlling Trevor had become in the weeks before the wedding. How his mother had practically taken over every decision. How isolated she had felt. I never should have let him come between us, she said, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. You were the only one who saw him clearly, and instead of listening, I pushed you away. Why did you do that? I asked, not accusingly, but genuinely wanting to understand. Eliza looked down at her hands. Because deep down, I think I knew you were right. And if I admitted that, I'd have to face that I was making a terrible mistake. It was easier to make you the problem than to admit he was. Her honesty surprised me. The old Eliza would have offered excuses or deflected responsibility. I'm so sorry, Madison, she continued, for uninviting you, for hurting you, for all of it. I know saying sorry isn't enough, but I don't know what else to do. It's a start, I said. But you're right, it's not enough by itself. Things need to change between us, Eliza. I love you, and I'll support you through this, but our relationship needs to be more balanced. What do you mean? She asked. I mean, I can't always be the one who bends, who forgives without consequences, who puts my feelings aside to manage yours. That pattern has to stop. She nodded slowly. I understand. I've taken you for granted. I've been selfish. And I've enabled it, I acknowledged. We've all played our parts in this dynamic. But now we have a chance to create something healthier. We talked for over an hour, more honestly than we had in years. I shared how I had felt constantly overlooked in favor of her more dramatic needs. She admitted to resenting my stability and success even while depending on it. We cried together, laughed a little, and began the tentative process of rebuilding our relationship on more equal footing. Later, we went downstairs together. Our parents looked relieved to see Eliza out of her room, but their expressions turned anxious when I announced that I had something to say to the entire family. I've had a lot of time to think about our family dynamics, I began. And I've realized that we've all been playing roles that aren't healthy. Mom and Dad, you've enabled Eliza's dependency while taking my independence for granted. Eliza, you've come to expect that your emotions and needs will always take priority. And I've allowed myself to be cast as the reliable one who never needs support. I looked at each of them in turn. I love you all, but I won't participate in these patterns anymore. If we want to be a healthy family, we all need to change. What are you saying exactly? Dad asked. I'm saying I'll be here for Eliza during this difficult time, but on my terms. I'll come by regularly, but not at the expense of my own life and needs. I'm saying that from now on, I expect my feelings and boundaries to be respected just as much as everyone else's. The conversation that followed was difficult, uncomfortable, and long overdue. There were tears, defensive moments, and painful recognitions. But for the first time, I felt truly heard by my family. And more importantly, I knew that regardless of how they responded, I would maintain my newfound sense of self-worth. As I drove home that evening, I felt both emotionally drained and strangely peaceful. The road ahead with my family wouldn't be easy. Old patterns don't change overnight. But I had taken the crucial first step by standing up for myself and naming the dysfunctional dynamics that had shaped so much of our lives. Whatever happened next, I knew I would face it with the strength and clarity I had discovered in Bali. 6 months after the wedding that never happened, our family gathered for Thanksgiving dinner at my apartment. It was the first holiday meal I had ever hosted, a deliberate choice to shift family traditions in a new direction. Looking around my dining table at the faces of my parents, Eliza, and my friends Tara and Jennifer, whom I had invited to join us, I could hardly believe how much had changed since that painful spring. The journey hadn't been easy or straightforward. In those first weeks after my return from Bali, there had been setbacks and struggles as we all adjusted to our changing family dynamic. Eliza had slipped into old patterns of dramatic need. Mom had instinctively rushed to soothe her, and Dad had looked to me to be the practical voice of reason. Each time it happened, I gently but firmly refused to play my assigned role. I love you, but I'm not going to fix this, became my quiet refrain. The breakthrough came when Eliza suggested we try family therapy. To my surprise, our parents readily agreed. Dr. Rachel Stevens, a family systems therapist with a no-nonsense approach, helped us identify and address the patterns that had defined our relationships for decades. Madison and Eliza, you've been cast as opposing archetypes in this family, she observed in an early session. The responsible one versus the emotional one. The achiever versus the one who struggles. These aren't who you actually are. They're roles you've been assigned and have accepted. With Dr. Stevens' guidance, we began the slow work of disentangling ourselves from these limiting identities. For Eliza, this meant taking responsibility for her choices and developing independence from our parents' emotional and financial support. I've been hiding from adulthood, she admitted during one particularly powerful session. It was easier to be the family drama queen than to face my own insecurities about measuring up to Madison's success. For our parents, the process involved recognizing how their different treatment of us had created and reinforced unhealthy dynamics. We expected perfection from Madison because she seemed capable of it, Mom acknowledged. And we expected little from Eliza because she seemed to need our protection. We did both of you a disservice. My own work in therapy focused on maintaining boundaries while still remaining connected to my family. Dr. Stevens helped me see that true strength wasn't about taking on everyone else's burdens, but about knowing when to engage and when to step back. Your value isn't measured by how much you can endure or how many problems you can solve for others, she reminded me. It's inherent in who you are. Beyond family therapy, Eliza and I began meeting regularly for coffee, rebuilding our relationship as adults rather than as the roles we had played for so long. She found a job at a small art gallery, moved into her own apartment without financial help from our parents, and started taking evening classes in art history. I want to build a life I'm proud of, she told me over lattes one Saturday. Not for Mom and Dad, not to compete with you, but for myself. I had continued the self-care practices I began in Bali, maintaining a regular yoga practice and journaling to process my thoughts and feelings. The boundaries I set with my family freed up emotional energy I now channeled into deepening friendships and exploring new interests. Tara and Jennifer remained my strongest supporters, celebrating each small victory as I stood firm in my newfound self-respect. They had become extended family, joining us for dinners and holidays, including this Thanksgiving gathering. Before we eat, Dad said, raising his glass in a toast, I want to say something. This past year has been one of the hardest and most important of our family's life. We've faced painful truths about ourselves and our relationships. But sitting here today, I'm grateful for the difficult journey because it's brought us to a healthier place than we've ever been. And Madison, Mom added, turning to me with tears in her eyes, thank you for having the courage to call us to account. You deserved better from us, and I'm so proud of the woman you've become. Eliza reached for my hand under the table and squeezed it gently. To new beginnings, she said. To new beginnings, we all echoed. As we enjoyed the meal I had prepared, conversation flowing naturally between serious topics and lighthearted stories, I felt a sense of peace I had never experienced in family gatherings before. The tension that had always hummed beneath the surface was gone, replaced by a new authenticity. After dinner, while everyone helped clear the table, Eliza pulled me aside. I've been meaning to tell you, she said quietly. I met someone. His name is Nathan, and he's an art history professor at the university where I'm taking classes. That's wonderful, I said, genuinely happy for her. Tell me about him. He's kind, she said simply, and patient. We're taking things very slowly. I'm trying to really know him and let him know me before rushing into anything. I'd love to meet him when you're ready, I offered. I'd like that, she smiled. But I'm not introducing him to Mom and Dad until I'm absolutely sure. I'm trying to make decisions based on what I want, not on what would please them or create drama. Her self-awareness touched me deeply. Of all the changes in our family, Eliza's growth was perhaps the most profound. Later that evening, after everyone had gone and I was loading the dishwasher, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. The painful exclusion from Eliza's wedding had been the catalyst for change, forcing me to finally prioritize my own well-being. What had felt like rejection had ultimately led to liberation. I thought of something Michael, the yoga instructor in Bali, had said, sometimes the most painful experiences are actually doorways to our most important growth. The wisdom of those words resonated deeply now. The breakdown of old patterns, though difficult, had created space for something new and healthier to emerge. By choosing myself in that moment of exclusion, by boarding a plane to Bali instead of accepting the role of forgotten sister, I had set in motion a transformation that rippled through my entire family. The lesson wasn't that family doesn't matter or that we should abandon difficult relationships. Rather, it was that true connection can only exist where there is mutual respect. Love without boundaries isn't really love at all, but a complex form of dependency that ultimately harms everyone involved. As I finished cleaning up and settled onto my couch with a cup of tea, I felt profound gratitude for the journey of the past 6 months. The pain had been real, but so was the healing that followed. By standing firm in my worth and refusing to participate in harmful patterns, I had helped create the conditions for genuine change. Family healing is possible, but it requires courage and honesty from everyone involved. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones to create healthier relationships? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that choosing themselves isn't selfish, but sometimes the most loving choice they can make. Thank you for being part of this journey with me, and remember, your worth is inherent, not earned through endless giving.